podcast. We have the honor today of being joined by Ajahn Kovilo. He is originally from Ohio and first encountered meditation through the Goenka tradition, like a lot of us in the States. In 2006, he decided to enter monastic life. He received full ordination in 2010 from Ajahn Pasano and Ajahn Amaro at Abhayagiri Monastery in Northern California. He then went on to spend over a decade training in the Ajahn Chah tradition, both in the US and in Thailand. In 2020, he began studies at Dharma Realm Buddhist University, where he focused on studying Pali, Sanskrit, and Chinese Mahayana Buddhism. He graduated just last year in 2024, and then he moved to Seattle to help found the Clear Mountain Monastery. Ajahn Kovilo, do you want to tell us a little bit about Abhayagiri Monastery or your Clear Mountain?
Yeah, so anyone who's anywhere near Ukiah, California, would definitely recommend visit up to Abhayagiri. It's just 15 minutes north of Ukiah in Redwood Valley, and that's where I ordained. And it's just a really beautiful, vibrant, living community of monastics trying to follow the ancient texts of Buddhism, both the Dhamma and the Vinaya, which is all of our monastic rules. And it's a tradition which really does try to adhere to the letter and the spirit of all of these ancient rules. And it's rather fascinating that it still works, and that it works with, yes, people are, for the most part, well adjusted, and it's a joyful community there. I was just there last week. We had a gathering of about 23 monks who all ordained at Abhayagiri, and there's no cost. You can go anytime. There's chanting and meditation every evening, and you can send an email to guestmonk@abhayagiri.org or just visit abhayagiri.org, and we'll put a link to that later if you're curious to visit, whether that's a day visit or to request to spend the night. And you can just basically, if you go and stay, you keep the 8 precepts of refraining from eating after noon and kind of some levels of adornment and rules of harmlessness, and basically just living like a monastic for as long as you're at the monastery. So it's a good window, good peek into what it's like to be a monastic. And it's where I ordained, and am now starting this project up in Seattle. I have a few Clear Mountaineers on the call tonight, and yeah, we don't yet have land, so we're a monastery virtually, which you might be surprised, but it's actually quite a beautiful online community. We have several events each week. I just put a link to our website, and teachings on Wednesday evening, both on YouTube, where we interview a really fairly broad selection of Buddhist teachers, monastics, and lay teachers who myself and my fellow monk Ajahn Nisabo have looked up to for a long time. So that's every Wednesday, and then after that, we have a Zoom session. Every Sunday evening, we go through the Majjhima Nikaya, which is the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, a very good way to introduce yourself into the texts of Theravada Buddhism. And on Saturdays, we meet in person and usually have about 80 people, and there's a potluck and guided meditation. And it's just a really sweet place to meet people who are Buddhist and Buddhist curious. So that's the introduction.
Yeah, without further ado, um, Ajahn Kovilo, one question that I would love to hear you speak to is the role of compassion in Theravada Buddhism. I know that sometimes that's something that can cause some confusion and hangups for people, but I know whenever I have visited a Thai forest monastery, I feel just hit with a wave of compassion. So can you just speak a little bit about what the role, how you see compassion fitting into the practice of Theravada Buddhism?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one which I think people might have, maybe stereotypes about. I think some people here are coming through DRBA, the Dharma Realm Buddhist Association, a Mahayana, Chinese Mahayana organization. It's affiliated with the City of 10,000 Buddhas, and there's almost a trope of the arahant as being a selfish, someone who's only looking out for themselves and is just attains enlightenment and then goes off and leaves all the rest of us behind. So this selfish arahant is, yeah, kind of a caricature, which you might find in some Dharma circles who just maybe they've never met Theravada Buddhists, and there are commentaries or sub commentaries in different traditions that just yeah have these cartoonish portraits of the other Buddhist traditions, and it's a great thing that now as it's easier to travel from one country to another and to have events like this, and you can have dialogue back and forth. You can learn more about actually what different traditions actually believe and how they hold the scriptures that are our own. So, compassion is definitely a big aspect of Mahayana Buddhism, where you have the Bodhisattva who is undertaking to save all living beings. One of the vows which you find in certainly in Zen Buddhism and in Chinese Buddhism is this: living beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. So,
Mm.
this deep, compassionate resolve to save others, to save other living beings, and that's you don't find that phrased as such in Theravada Buddhism, and the thrust really is one of seclusion. There's an allowance for seclusion and for practicing to get rid of one's own greed, anger, and delusion. And where the compassion comes in is that we ourselves are living beings, and
Mm.
there's a place for looking after ourselves. And there is a sutta where the Buddha says um, that someone who is drowning in quicksand could save someone else who's drowning in quicksand. That's not possible. So there's this large allowance for someone who, for whatever reason, don't feel like they have the power, the spiritual um, capacities to quote save anyone else, but are just yeah, I need to figure out my own mind, my own heart, figure out how I cause suffering for myself, and really looking at suffering is the foundation of Theravada Buddhism. And we have what are called the Four Noble Truths, which certainly exist in all forms of Buddhism: Chinese Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. But they're really at the center of Theravada Buddhism. The Buddha's first sermon, the setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the first of which is there is suffering. So that's what we're studying in our lives. And fortunately, the Buddha didn't stop there, but we got three more. There is a cause of suffering, there is a cessation of suffering, there's an ending of suffering, and there's a path leading to that ending of suffering. So, really, the foundation of our practice, being the Four Noble Truths, is a compassionate one. Compassion literally means to be with suffering. And it's first a being with our own suffering, because that's really how we learn how to deal with suffering, is when we are able to sit with ourselves for a bit longer than we might think is otherwise possible. In some of the Theravada commentaries, it says, what is it that obscures suffering? Why is it that, you ask some people and, are you suffering? Or they hear that Buddhism teaches about suffering and they say, I don't, I don't suffer. I don't, what are you talking about? I'm not suffering. And why people don't see it is because they're constantly moving around. What obscures suffering is movement, or is change of postures, literally. So we don't sit long enough to realize that our minds are totally out of control. Rachel, as you mentioned, these Goenka retreats, you come and you don't pay anything for these retreats, and you just sit with your mind, watching the breath or watching sensations in the body for about 10 hours a day for 10 days. That's a deep dive. And, I certainly had never sat that long with my own mind. And when I did, what I realized is that, God, before that was raised Unitarian, a very compassionate religion. Um, and, a lot
Mm.
of service orientation in my life before that, working at a homeless shelter and always trying to find ways to be of service. But I sit down with my mind for, even not to mention 10 hours, but just like, minute 31, on the first day, it's like, God, there's this ocean of unexplored emotions and feelings in the body that I just didn't know what to do with. And the first 2 or 3 days was just basically sinking in that. And it was really only on the third day when I kind of felt like I could get my head above water and feel like, wow, there's so much going on under the surface, so much suffering here. And I think that have the capacity to go and save other people, but gosh, I don't even know what to do with my own mind. So that's compassion. Trying to figure out the problem of suffering and conversely the causality of happiness. And when we can see that in our own lives and live in a community which is hopefully training in that themselves, and when we have teachers who have been doing this for decades and decades, and they just can sit like rocks for hours, but just have utter hearts of kindness, softness, and gentle care. Just to kind of tie it into Mahayana practice. So we do have practices of course, sitting with our own suffering, and hopefully, when we do that, we're able to be with other people's suffering, to be able to just sit with other people without collapsing. Uh, but coming to DRBU, and I actually went to CTTB, the City of 10,000 Buddhas, before I ordained and learned the Great Compassion Mantra, which really is, for me, it's a very practical way of uh, eliciting and calling forth great compassion within oneself. Or the quick mantra that I think Marty teaches, that Master Wa taught, of what is it? Patience, patience, gotta have patience, swaha, bodhi swaha, something like that. And yeah, these are active tools. And really, any form of Buddhism, I loved learning new techniques and strategies for very practical tools for dealing with my own mental states and thus the mental states of the people around me. So.
Got one quick question from Valerie Davis Paris. She says, "What Buddha did you show us at the beginning that was your gift?"
This was a gift that Art gave me. I'm not sure where he got it from. Um, it has a Thai, so Thai Buddhists often have this kind of flame coming out of the head of the Buddha, and I like it. It's kind of like the flame of wisdom, and there is oftentimes in many Buddha images you'll find postural hints. So yeah, when you sit for a long time, you might start noticing that there's this inner channel that goes down from the base of the spine all the way up to the top of the head. And you can actually, there's interesting things you can do in meditation when you can imagine just being pulled up from the top of your head and light actually coming from the top of your head. It looks like a Theravada monk because it has this Sangati, a Theravada Buddha. And yeah, not everyone likes the flame. I know one monk who actually had the most beautiful. It was called the Great Mahakaruna Buddha, actually, and it had one of these Thai, flame things at the top. And he was a monk from, I think, Eastern Europe, and he really didn't like the flame, so he actually sawed it off. He sawed it off, and he's a nice monk. So you can do that if you do it with respect. So yeah, I think it's a Thai monk, and Art gave it to me, and now I'm currently at my mother's house visiting California, and I have left this Buddha at my mom's house, and I put it somewhere very high, and hope that it will spread out some Buddhist love to my mom and stepdad. So thanks, Art.
One thing that I think maybe a lot of people like I hear this question asked of monks a lot, so hopefully I can ask on behalf of other people here. Could you help us understand what inspired you to make that step to actually ordain as a monk? Because that's, definitely not a common decision for someone raised in the West.
Yes, for someone raised in the West. Actually, in Thailand, it was at least up until 25 years ago or so, the majority of male Thais Thai people had taken, do taken the tradition still exists, but probably less than 70%. But that's probably still the majority of Thai men will take a temporary ordination. So in Chinese Buddhism, in Sri Lankan Buddhism, monks are often expected to take lifetime vows. So you ordain, and in the Chinese tradition, they actually do these like kind of incense marks. So you're like marking yourself for life to be a disciple of the Buddha as a monastic. Whereas in Thailand, there is this tradition of temporary ordination. So the vast majority of monks in Thailand who ordain will disrobe. It's just the norm. Here in the West, yeah, it's not normal. What having a society where that's a norm for people to enter into the robes for some period of time, traditionally 3 months was the norm. You get a sense of the beauty of the form of a monastic and why having monastics in a society is a useful thing. You train in not eating afternoon the whole time, and you realize how hard that is. You train in celibacy, and you realize how difficult and challenging that can be. And you realize the harmlessness of living that life, and that permeates this experience. The cultural memory is there, and you see it. People, yeah, I can go for alms anywhere with my alms bowl in Thailand, and we'll get fed, no doubt. So, but here in America, yes, it's uncommon. But myself, as with at one point a majority of the monks at Abhayagiri, it was these Goenka retreats. So just if you haven't heard of this, you can go to dhamma.org, dhamma.org, and it's a very simple presentation of Theravada Buddhism, which doesn't, it took me about a year to realize it even was Theravada Buddhism, because it is a very universal technique where you're just watching the breath at the tip of the nose for 3 days, and then you watch sensations from the top of the head down to the soles of the feet. And yeah, when I realized just how uncontrolled my mind was, and that there are tools, specifically these meditation techniques that I can practice, which have an effect on that insanity. The constant rush of thoughts that I didn't want and can't get rid of, it seems. There are tools to deal with that. And that was my first glimpse. I was 20 years old when I did my first retreat. And after that retreat, I was like, gosh, the depth of the education that I got in these past 10 days was just, I was in university at the time, getting a liberal arts degree. And uh, yeah, the studies that I was doing was just going nowhere near the depth of learning of just one day of doing this Goenka retreat. So I'm like, gosh, I need more of this. I need more of this. I found that in I could basically just yeah, fake my way through the classes. I would have easily was getting good grades, but like I wanted something deeper. So I didn't yet know it was possible to ordain, but that was the beginning of my search for something deeper. And yeah, after a year, I figured out he was teaching Theravada Buddhism and took some more retreats, learned more about the Pali Canon, and just fell in love. So first fell in love with meditation, and after that first retreat, I started practicing religiously in the sense that I religiously sat 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, doing the technique that I had learned in that retreat every day. And I did it literally every single day. I had never been a religious person, but that was, yeah, so basically fell in love with meditation and then fell in love with the Pali Canon, and then figured out that it was possible to ordain in America. And 2 years after that first retreat, I basically had given away all my stuff and I found it fairly easy to get by and found it a good challenge to, yeah, to live with less. Can I be happy with less? It was a very good challenge and just kept giving away more and more. But I was also becoming a bit unbalanced, actually, psychologically, because I didn't have a community. These are retreats, and you go there for 10 days and then you leave. And I didn't have a sangha. I wasn't yet living in a monastery. And yeah, I was confused and I was meditating a lot, but I didn't actually know. I was practicing silence a lot because that's what you do on these retreats. And I was getting a little bit off. And I think my family could see it, and it was not inspiring faith in them. They were not becoming, wow, this guy is doing great Buddhism. I was becoming weird. So it was a good thing that I made it to the monastery where you live with other people who are trying to do the same difficult thing. And you've got a teacher who can, kind of just like a water buffalo. This is a simile that Ajahn Chah used. He says, he had the question asked of him many times, how do you teach these Westerners? You are Thai, you don't speak English, and they're, Western, they don't speak Thai. How do you teach them? And he says, oh, it's not too difficult. It's just like water buffaloes. If they go off to the right, you tap them this way, and if they go off to the left, you tap them that way, and
Mm.
eventually they kind of start going a little bit more straight. So that was my experience being a water buffalo, and really grateful that I was able to find a community, because I did want to, pretty much right after that first retreat, I just saw the depths of the training that my mind really needed and found that it was possible. So,
Thank you for that answer. We have a question from Steve in Fresno. He says, the suffering of losing a loved one is extremely difficult to endure. Is there something in the Four Noble Truths that can help reduce, eliminate this suffering?
mm, yeah. So there's the Four Noble Truths, as we mentioned before. The first is suffering. Second is the cause, that craving actually causes more suffering, that there's an end to it, and that end is reached through giving up that craving, the unhealthy, unhelpful craving. And the fourth is the path that really helps that way of relinquishment. Um, but there's also four noble moves. So in that first discourse that the Buddha gave, he teaches the Four Noble Truths, those four, and he gave Four Noble Moves, is what I'm calling it, which are basically instructions for each of those truths. So with dukkha, the truth of suffering, suffering is to be understood. Suffering is to be understood. The cause of suffering, that is craving, it's to be abandoned. The cessation, the ending of suffering, is to be realized, and the path is to be developed. So you have to look where you are. And one of our teachers, Ajahn Tanisro, he teaches that basically those are our moves for life. Those are our moves in Buddhism. Those are our moves if we want to reduce the suffering in our lives, is what which one of those is the right move in this moment. And if we're experiencing dukkha, that we just can't avoid, if it's a deep level of grief, and I'm sorry, I didn't see the name. I'm sorry you're experiencing that, and I'm sorry for your loss. And there is a place for sitting with it, but most of us don't have the capacity to just sit with it till it completely passes. So, yeah, looking for, are there ways that we're exacerbating and adding to the dukkha? Are we craving for things to be different? And yeah, with the death of a loved one, there probably is some level of, yeah, we wish they weren't dead. And that's a natural human wish. And you can't really just shut it off. You really have to gain skill and finesse in all of these different moves, all of these different tools. So seeing, just looking, is there a way that you're thinking or you're emoting, which is maybe unnecessary, not just berating yourself or uh, you know uh, self-flagellating yourself, basically torturing yourself because you've got this emotion that you don't want. But seeing if there are ways that you can let go of some maybe unhelpful way of thinking, um, then letting that go.
Mm.
Um, and then, yeah, the path is a broad one. So we've got the Eightfold Noble Path: the truth of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And just to maybe hone in on the right effort there are four types of right effort. Theravada Buddhism is very nested. We have lots of nested lists, very hyperlinked. You can think of it just like a Wikipedia article. You click on First Noble Truth, and it will take you to all these other lists, which then connect. It's a huge web of interconnected lists. And lists are great because you can easily memorize them, because oftentimes when something comes up in the moment, it's, yeah, good to have something that you've memorized to go back to. So you have these four efforts: the effort to for the non-arising of unarisen, unhelpful states; the effort to abandon arisen, unhelpful states; the effort to bring about unarisen, helpful states; and there isn't the desire, yeah, the wholesome desire, the right effort to uh, continue and develop wholesome states that have already arisen. So, yeah, looking, yeah, is there a place for seeing the suffering that you're experiencing and, um, yeah, maybe even cherishing the learning experience that, yeah, if you can, if we can be with the suffering, then we can be with other people's suffering. Say when a friend's loved one passes, then we've been through that and we can be with them. So, yeah, seeing if you can incline towards wisdom, and see if you can abandon any, yeah, unhelpful aspect of that. Like maybe, um, yeah, if a certain amount of time has passed, then it's possible that we are wallowing in the suffering, and there might be some form of selfing that you're doing, which is unnecessary and might actually be counterproductive. So, yeah, and being with friends, if having a spiritual community, people who will sit with you and maybe cheer you up. That's the Buddha said. His main disciple came up to him and said, "Buddha, this is Ananda. He said, Buddha, I've learned that spiritual friendship is half of the holy life." And the Buddha says, "Ananda, don't say that. Don't say that. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the holy life." So having wise people who will sit with you, who will be able to sit with you while you're suffering, sit with us while we're not doing well, and who can cheer us up when we're ready for that. So I wish you all the best.
Being a monk, do you feel more protected or shielded from the current political chaos? In comparison, if you were a layman, do you have a more clear or a more conscious mind? Thank you.
I definitely do. Um, yeah, and it was actually tested. I about 2.5 weeks ago. Me and my monk brother and many monks spend 3 months of the year doing winter retreat. So we're doing lots of meditation. It was, I think at the time we were doing 7 hours a day of meditation. And I took 1 week out to go visit my grandma in sunny South Carolina. And she was having her 101st birthday. So I had a great week with grandma, and then came back to Seattle and was offered a ride home from the airport. And I said, no, I'm just going to, I got this Metro card. I'll just take the uh, fast, kind of the fast rail downtown, and then I can just walk 2 blocks to the bus stop and then take the bus to the ferry and then get home. But those 2 blocks on a Sunday evening, you'd think it would be a safe enough situation, but yeah, I get out and it was, uh, yeah, not not a good scene. There, basically, all of the street lights had been maybe intentionally put out, but very dark place. I get out of the subway station and it's dark, and end up within 1 block, end up getting yelled at and abused and punched and put in a headlock and then forced to the ground and put in a chokehold and all sorts of stuff. I gave a talk about it, which I recommend if you are into that. Um, but basically, yeah, this question was tested. It's like violence, experiencing a level of violence that, frankly, I had never experienced in my life before. And yeah, my immediate reflections were Buddhist ones of, um, yeah, thinking about my own privilege to have contact with the Dharma, to realize the value of non-anger, to realize the value of not wanting to uh, give rise to any kind of thoughts of revenge or anything. And honestly, they just didn't even come up. I was getting beat up and I didn't even try to fight back at all. It was just, yeah, it just went ragdoll. And yeah, so I do think that I've been living in these sheltered in a sense, but sheltered in a very good way. I've been living with people who I can trust just so deeply. Um, yeah, people don't lie at our monasteries, and you can trust the people around you. And there's certainly, um, yeah, no violence. And even to the extent that you get more sensitized to violence. And um, yeah, so we are living these very privilegedly close to Dharma lives in very safe environments. And I felt protected that night. And once the guy realized, 6'3", probably 200 pounds, once he realized that he was mistaken. I didn't even get robbed. It's like he had a narrative. Honestly, I think he was the one with PTSD. And I made a noise. I stepped on this sign, which was collapsed, and he was triggered and ended up, yeah, just acting on that trigger. Maybe thought I was going to do him violence. And when he realized that that was just a totally false story, and when he maybe had his eyes open to some extent and saw that this bald guy is wearing some religious like clothes, and basically, yeah, he just kind of backed away and the whole thing ended. I did feel protected. And then right after that, I felt protected by everyone I encountered. It was a fascinating, almost like opening into different realms. You talk about different realms in Buddhism and in Christianity, and felt like I'd temporarily been inserted into found myself in a hell realm, or like a hungry ghost realm, or a realm of titans. And then, um, yeah, and then coming away from there and getting on the bus, felt like I met devas who, angels, these, human angels who I just would have overlooked if I hadn't been in such a place of shock, honestly, and pain. And yeah, I went through the rest of that night just seeing the angels in the people around me in like a real way, which was, yeah, eye opening. So definitely protected, definitely shielded. In terms of the political chaos, yeah, I mean, we do live privileged lives in another sense, is that we don't use money. All of the food we eat is given to us. Every calorie the monastic eats has been given to them. So we just eat one meal a day before noon, and it's not that much. And we stay in huts that are pretty small, and we don't have that many physical needs. So, um, yeah, yeah, our jobs are not on the line, which many people's are. People in my family, sister in education, brother's wife in actually working at in the White House. And yeah, I live a life which can be separated from that. And it is important in our tradition. Uh, Monastics don't align themselves with any particular party. And that's a good thing, because it allows for members of either party or no party, or utter news confusion, or total news non, people just don't listen to the news at all. People can come to us and they can feel safe because we're not, waving our color, in the air. And but we can talk to um, skillful and unskillful speech. People who are people in power, or we can talk about that level of things if politicians are speaking unskillfully and doing things which are leading to harm. That's easy to speak to. But yeah, we do have this level of distance from the chaos. And yeah, it does allow us to be kind of a sounding board. People do come up with us. And honestly, it is, in the last several months, we've been hearing a lot of stories about people who, yeah, whose jobs or physical safety, as they feel, has been, yeah, really tested. And they can come to us, and yeah, we can hear them first. We can hear them and sit with their dukkha to whatever extent we can, and maybe suggest some things if they're open to hearing what we might have to add a different perspective, because we're coming from a different perspective.
And my question is, because your intro says Mahayana curious, so I'm curious about your practice and experience of great compassion mantra. I would like for you to talk more in detail in those aspects. And also I have a third question now, is because I graduated from Ohio State University. I was very close to a host family for like hardcore Christians. And I'm not just asking for myself, but maybe for a lot of people here, like how do you talk to them with compassion in this time, like the current political environment whatsoever. So what's your advice on that? Because you're from Ohio, of course, you're very familiar with those communities.
Yeah, to
Thank
some
you.
extent. I was raised, yeah, thank you, Mei Ying. It's good to meet you, and I'm glad you're at the university. It is a really, I was very grateful for my time there, and it did really allow me to do a deeper dive into Mahayana teachings. And I mostly went there for the Pali study in Sanskrit. But I had visited City of 10,000 Buddhas, as I said, before I ordained, and was just utterly blown away by the dedication of the practitioners before I ordained. I think I sat an Abhayagiri retreat and a Guanyin/Chan retreat at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. And the melodies of those Namo Guan Shi Yin Pu Sai Na. Yeah, and actually quite a few of these other melodies just stuck in my heart. I was only there for 2 months working on the farm at the time before ordination. But it had a huge effect. I've been continuing these mantras usually with other words. There was a period where I felt I had to go hardcore Theravada, and I just changed all the words of those Mahayana mantras, kept the tune, and just did Namo Shakyamuni Buddha or Buddha, 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 something like this. And yeah, I for whatever reason we do have vows about not singing, but for me it's just an internal melody which just makes me happy, and I'm not humming it or yelling it at anybody. It's just my own internal kind of joy mechanism. And then coming back to so that I went to City of 10,000 Buddhas first in 2007, and then just 5 years ago went back and attended DRBU, and yeah, allowed me both to get better at my Pali Sanskrit and to uh, reintroduce myself to these different mantras, these different practices. Every semester, as you know, Mei Ying, there's the CEI, the Contemplative Exercise Immersion, and both the Chan retreat, where we're doing basically sitting meditation with a huato or kind of a meditation to make you look back, to look for the looker, so to speak, to take the backward step. I found that very useful, and the Guanyin session. And pretty much for the last several years, my main mantra has been Guanyin Buddho, Guanyin Buddho. So kind of like a marriage between Mahayana and Theravada. So you've got Guanyin and Buddho, which is the main mantra of Thai forest Buddhism. And it works for me. And basically with a mantra in my tradition, what you do with Buddho as a mantra is you look. So Buddho, it literally means, as the word Buddha, Buddha is the one who is awake, and Buddho is that which is awake. It's the principle of wakefulness. And what our teachers, Ajahn Mun, Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Lumpur Sumedho, really pointed to is looking for that which is knowing. So it's not just reifying, singing this mantra to oneself all the time, but having this mantra go as a reason, an internal mechanism to point you back at that which is knowing. It's a reminder to look back at, yeah, what is it that's knowing right now? And the Guanyin mantra does that. And for me, it also brings a flavor of compassion and a flavor of emptiness. So when you look back at the looker, oh, it's actually empty. Yeah, I can't find the looker anywhere. It seems both everywhere and nowhere. And that's fascinating. So to be able to take what I do with these mantras is to make them very meaningful in the present moment. And yeah, as to whether the Pure Land exists, as to whether reciting Amitabha's name will take me there after I die, I wish I could believe that. I wish I could believe it. Sounds that would be the best. That would be the best. And I just can't totally get my mind around that, but that's totally fine. I do believe that I do believe in other realms. I do believe in heaven realms. I believe in ghost realms, and not just the ones that you know find here on Earth. But yeah, I do believe in other realms, but I'm not sure what I think about yeah, Pure Land Buddhism or the Pure Land. But if I recite Guanyin's name, it's said in the Universal Door chapter, then maybe Guanyin, when I pass away, if I haven't attained some level of Theravada awakening, stream entry, or above, then maybe Guanyin will hook me by the neck and pull me up to the Pure Land or somewhere great. I would be totally open to that. So I'm kind of I'm sowing all these seeds with Guanyin now. And yeah, I honestly don't know. It's a beautiful thing that helps me stay in the present moment. And um, I did have some interesting experiences actually on that Guanyin retreat in school when, yeah, as anyone who knows the Universal Door chapter, it's rather amazing anecdotes of people who are in dire straits. They might be at sea and their ship is sinking and they recite Guanyin's name and Guanyin saves them from various disasters. And I don't know what I think about that. It's not a sutta that you find in the Pali Canon. Um, but when I was on this retreat, there were times when my mind just would not settle. I would be doing as much as I could with it. I was manipulating, you know, watching the breath and doing as much eyeing as I could. I was settling things as much as I could, physically relaxing the body as much as I could. But then there just comes a point when you just reach a wall. You've pushed as far as you can push. And I would just had this on a number of occasions during that Guanyin retreat where I just keep reciting Guanyin's name and just whatever insight, whatever Guanyin is, if Guanyin is external, if Guanyin is internal, I need some help. I need some help here. And if it's just my deep subconscious, I'm fine with that. But I've reached a wall and Guanyin, Namo Guanyin Pusa, Guanyin Budo. And yeah, in a way which wasn't me, like kind of the right thing to do in meditation came up spontaneously. It wasn't something that I created or I had some deep insight and knew exactly what to do in those moments, but they were moments of genuine, not me insights. So was that Guanyin? Was it my subconscious? I don't know, but yeah, it did give me a measure of faith that, yeah, this open question of, yeah, I'm open to, some help. I'm open to help here. Mind is a crazy thing. The Buddha said in the Pali Canon that the mind is more variegated than the animal kingdom. So we've got crocodiles and we've got parrots and we've got mice and we've got snakes and we've got, think of an animal and we've got it up in this mind. So yeah, sometimes we can only use a little bit of help. And yeah, I can hold Guanyin mantra in a place of not knowing. I don't know if Guanyin exists, but yeah, maybe she can respond, even if I don't know if she exists. So, and in terms of dealing with Christians, apology, Meiying, yeah, I think just being a good person and being a peaceful person. I'm surprised oftentimes at airports or yeah, people just will stop me and say thank you. I am, wearing the Buddhist flag around my body pretty much all the time. But yeah, people who are open to it are open to it, and they see that I'm a seeker. People who are wearing this robes are trying to look for peace. So yeah.
A general desire to understand how to take practices like Vipassana meditation and then really practically bring that into our lives in other ways. Maybe if we can't be on, if we don't have the opportunity to go on a retreat. So Bernie asked, I've noticed increasing numbers of young people drawn to meditation, but at the same time reluctant to make the moves to deepen their connections with a community of practitioners or study the teachings. Do you have any suggestions to help us to encourage them to deepen their meditation practice in these ways? So maybe you could answer that question and maybe tie it into sort of just a general how does everyone bring these teachings to their lives?
Yeah, no, there is kind of like a poverty in American Buddhism. People come, they're interested in meditation, and really that's all they want. So many Americans, it's like they've left their religion of birth and they're looking for the stripped down. They don't want all of the iconography. They don't want the statues. They don't want any gestures which they feel like are, you know, um, imbecilically religious or needlessly meaningless gestures. People don't want that, and rightly so. But it's so easy to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There's so many aspects that things which the Buddha taught, which are supplements, adjuncts to meditation. So, just anyone who's been to City of 10,000 Buddhas, um, yeah, hopefully you've seen there's a lot of bowing. So bowing, um, something we do it a lot in a monastery. Before when you wake up, so I every room in our monasteries has a shrine, and just even if you're not Buddhist or if you have a shrine, some kind of sacred high up, put it, on top of a dresser, but some symbols of that which is the highest in your life, your long-term goal, that which you actually want to remember, that which you want to inculcate and strengthen within yourself. And the Buddha, for me, is a symbol of that, of all of that. The Buddha is just the master at the generosity of heart and the solidity of ethical sensibility, the paramount of meditative solidity. And so I bow to that. I wake up. First thing I do is bow. Go before I go to bed, bow 3 times. And yeah, you don't need to have a Buddha if you don't want a Buddha statue. Just but just bowing to something. So that's some gesture you can do. The Tibetan style bowing, it's not just a nice exercise of intentional faith or intentional remembering that which is the highest. It's also physical exercise. We have a club, it's an unofficial club up in Seattle called the 28 Bow Club. And if you have a mala, it's just 1/4 of a 108 bead mala, roughly. And you bow 28 times a day, and you do that every single day for a year, and that's 10,000 bows, people. And yeah, you can't really count faith, but how else are you going to count something except by counting it? So faith, that's one way to practice faith, finding ways to give in terms of community. I would invite anybody to come up and see us in Seattle. It's a really beautiful community that which is basically just when you see it, you can't unsee it. It's a healthy community, it's a mature community, and it's not just a meditation community. We do sit and meditate together, but we're also listening to teachers. People bring food. It's a potluck, and people talk, and it's just a very safe and friendly and um, extremely uplifting place for anybody who wants to come. There's no cost at all. We have free distribution books, which are free. And yeah, so come up to Seattle or visit Abhayagiri, a similarly beautiful place, or go check out DRBU. Similarly, people who are, practicing renunciation, practicing simplicity, figuring out ways to um, live with less. But this is a definition from Ajahn Chah. A monastic is the symbol for someone who has few things, but abundant well-being. So that's the direction that we're hopefully leaning towards. And when you see that, it's inspiring and it makes you, oh, maybe I don't need all this stuff and maybe I could be happy with less. And so, yeah, finding community, it really is important. And not just if all you can find is a sitting group, then that's great. Hopefully, you'll at least talk to the people afterwards. Finding ways to be generous. If you're in Ukiah, you can go on alms. There's an alms club. You can contact Iwan, I think who might be here, or Idan. But yeah, there's information on the Abhayagiri website about that. So yeah, finding ways to be generous, keeping precepts, practicing, bowing to something, bow to something, everybody, other than yourself. So those are just some thoughts. It's been really lovely seeing those who have their cameras on and seeing the names of the people who I know. So yeah, thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you all for those Thank you for those really practical tips, Ajahn Kovilo. And thank you everyone for the questions. I wish we could have gotten to them all. Maybe we can do another event like this in the future, or if not, hopefully you guys can connect with Ajahn Kovilo through the Clear Mountain Monastery, or go visit Abhayagiri or a monastery near you and speak with some monastics directly in person. Thank you, Ajahn Kovilo, for your time. It was just so wonderful to really get to hear you really share deeply and for an extended period of time. I haven't had a chance to really to hear from your heart.